Hello, everybody. It's Laura Victoria Ward in Inner Outer Space. We have a very small Zoom class today. And I'm actually going to spotlight myself so that it stays on me, even though everybody else can be. I don't want to. It's funny. I spotlight it and then I have to switch it back to gallery so I can actually see everybody. Um, okay. So I've been actually doing this, and I'm going to mute you, Quentin, just because the sound is feeding back. There we go. Yeah, mute yourself. You can unmute in a second. We can talk. But there's something that I've been playing with this week, and it's funny. Quentin was just talking about a mindfulness practice, and we've just started the video. And I've been doing a lot of mindfulness meditation also. I'm kind of playing with some of these ideas that are from continuum and from the embodiment world in different meditation practices. So I want to actually start us off with this meditation that we'll probably do a little longer than we normally do, like maybe 4 or 5 minutes. So seated in any way that's comfortable for you, or you could do it standing, or you could do it lying down as well. And the idea is that we're going to start with the Luna breath. And the Luna breath is like it's a continuum breath. It's a very light, almost distilled ujjayi breath. So if they're in ujjayi, we're doing a kind of clamping down. In the continuum version, you could never hear it outside of your own head. So I'd have to be very close to hear another person making that sound. So if I do it really close to the thing, you probably can't hear it, but it's almost like you hear the sound of ha in your head, like almost like there's a very silent just inside your own head, and it's your own breath. And for me, what it allows me to do is to really bring my focus in. And for me also, I feel like it brings it right into this part of me, sort of upper midline. And in the continuum world, they say that Luna breath kind of like it takes you so deep inside that you almost become invisible to other people. I mean, I may be making up that version, but I've heard that it brings you so still into this sort of quietness that it's very internal. And it's almost like the sound of listening to a seashell or outer space sound. So we're going to do the inhale is going to be like you're inhaling, like you're filling up the whole ball of your body. So imagining that on the inhale, everything is getting bigger. So it's almost like this idea of cellular breathing, or it is like the idea of cellular breathing, but it's coming all the way out to your skin. So what happens to me, and you can just imagine this if you don't feel it, but if you can feel it, what happens to me is it gives me goosebumps. As I come out to the skin, I feel that edge of body. And then on the exhale, I bring it back into the Luna. So I'm coming really deep inside. So in a way, we could say this is like this central to periphery breath. So inhale, we're filling up and expanding, getting bigger. And on the exhale, we're coming into that Luna and letting it last as long as feels comfortable, which may be a long time. It may be a very short time. Does that make sense? You guys good? Okay. So let's try that. And let's go. I'm going to use a timer so that I can close my eyes. You could also do this with eyes open, and I have been doing it with eyes open actually most of the time, but I think right now, just to really go in, I'm going to go eyes closed. So I'm doing a timer for 5 minutes. Try to keep coming back to that interior sound, Luna exhale, growing big to the edges in your inhale. And if it gets too much, just take resting breaths anytime. Your mind starts to wander, come back to this sense of growing and shrinking with the breath. And then slowly letting yourself come back to the screen and just feeling into where you are now. Hey, Abby. And let's take a hand on chest and lungs. Relax your tongue, relax your face, and just invite some micro movement into your spine. So thinking of this idea of the spine like a river from your head to your tail. It's kind of a Liz Koch idea, and just inviting in some interior fluidity. It's almost like sea grasses, or just the movement of water in a very gentle pond. And then from there, I want to play with this. I want to bring a little bit of the idea of effort in, of Laban's idea of effort. And we're gonna just play with lightness. So imagine that you have like two little helium balloons. Your hands are two helium balloons. Just imagine your hands being helium balloons and just rising, light and easy, just like they're just floating up. And then imagine that you're pushing two big empty jugs underwater. You know how that is, like if the jug is full of air and you're trying to shove it under the water. So you're really coming down with a sense of strength, pushing down. And then you can let the jugs release and allow the arms to just float up again, floating up like they're rising, so easy, as if they're just being called up. And then you find that strength and you're just pushing down those jugs, where it takes really some concentration and some focus to push down, some muscle activity. And then letting that go and just floating it up again. Floating, 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 rising with lightness. And coming down, pushing down with strength. And then just shaking that off. And let's touch back in. So we did that continuum Luna breath with the expansion breath, growing and shrinking. Did you guys notice anything? How was that?
Yeah, for me it was like a long echo from, I don't know, from somewhere in my layers, from deep down. And I was moving like with the waves of the seas for a while. And yeah, it was also like a stardust dream. I don't know, it was a lot of things going, a lot of energy. Like, yeah, I think I have a lot of energy in my body. Even I was in my bed, but I was awake all the time. Yeah, something is flowing, or yeah.
Yeah. Quentin, how about you?
I did two different things. The first thing, I tried to reproduce what you said were the instructions, and that.
Oh, I can't hear you at all. Are you hearing anything, Peen? Damn.
Yes, and that probably is because I'm used to meditating, and those instructions come up, like don't breathe into your chest, or it's okay to breathe in your chest. You know, so my brain was familiar with that. I tried to anchor into my feet to use that, and then try to follow the rest of the direction. It worked, but the sensation didn't completely fill. It was like head, hands, chest, belly, and maybe feet, and that was it. The rest was very incorporeal or whatever. So one of the last breaths I had, it was almost like I unintentionally whistled. So I just used sound. I used sound with the breath, and it filled up like a balloon. I mean, or a shell, you know, like what you were saying. And I filled up with sound, and then something kind of interesting happened. It almost felt like there were two people inside of me. Like there was a small person, a child, like there was some there was something inside of me, and there was a bigger me filling my body. So my body felt bigger, but it also felt bigger on the inside and more full. But then inside of that was another me or another awareness, smaller. And I don't know if that happened with the exhale or not, but that's what I got.
That's interesting. Interesting. So let's play with that idea. So this idea of growing and shrinking is like is a Laban. It's not even a Laban. I think it's a Bartenieff idea that as we inhale, and it doesn't have to be with an inhale, but this idea of expansion radiating outward, and then sort of coming back into self. So, and I'm going to mute you again because you're feeding back a little bit. But I'm going to stand up for this and play with this idea of growing, because I feel like I can feel it very easily into my skin because my body has done it so much, getting really big and then contracting back in and coming small. So it could be big in any dimension. You can go forward, backward, and then come back in, or reaching out and bringing it back, growing and shrinking with the breath. So you want to try and inhale and expand and get bigger, and then exhale, come back into yourself. Inhaling, widening, exhaling, narrowing, or inhaling, lengthening, and exhaling, shortening or inhaling, bulging into the forward backward space, and exhale into the small space. This could be done on the floor. And I'm going to invite you, if you're comfortable and you have the space, to go ahead and get down on the floor and play with it in the same way, where it's like growing out and then coming into yourself, expanding outward and exhaling, closing in. So reaching away from center and then coming in. So in a way, we're spoking out into the world, and then we're coming back into ourselves. So into the center, reaching out to the periphery, and then coming back to center, growing and shrinking. It could be in any ways, it could be very expansive and contracting, radiating outward, bringing it in, whatever way feels curious, interesting, getting big and getting small. You could also just do it really small, growing and shrinking, letting yourself get bigger and smaller. Just finding different ways of radiating outwards and then pulling it back in. So as I'm doing this, my version of getting bigger and smaller, I'm also like kind of letting my body massage itself out as I'm on the floor. I'm getting this more varied relationship with gravity. So I'm not just in my vertical position, but I'm also in this position on the floor, rolling around, letting that hydrate tissue, waking up the body with this growing and shrinking idea. Getting bigger and then getting smaller, growing like a balloon in all directions and then coming back in towards center. So just allowing it, that's just an exploration. And all of this stuff, because Quentin had written something to me saying that he was practicing his bad Laban. And Laban's really just a way of mapping movement and looking at movement. And I think that when we have more names for things and more specific boxes to put things in, we have more access to different possibilities. So for me, that's one of the things, like if we all already know what movement is, we all already have our ABCs of movement and being in a body. But when we add these other layers, it's like, oh, suddenly you have an encyclopedia, or you have much more possibility. And it also can be uncomfortable to do things that are new to us. So I've been reading this book, a Thomas Hanna book, who's like one of the sort of founding fathers of somatics. Or I think he's maybe one of the first people that started using the term soma as like this experience of being a person, of like consciousness in our bodies. And he also, I think, worked with Moshe Feldenkrais. But he's talking about how a lot of people, as they become adults, start to narrow in their world. Like, now I'm going to just do this thing, and I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to marry this person, and then I'm going to live in this house, and I'm going to stay in this neighborhood, and I'm going to shop at these stores. Like, instead of the world being bigger for a lot of people as they get more adult, the world starts to close in and get smaller and more specific. And especially for men, and I'm going to say this especially for like Western I'm going to go with the white men because they have more of a limited capacity for thinking about how movement could be. That's a really horrible thing to say. That's not true. That's on a huge generalized level. Like if we look at like where power came from in the aristocracy, right? Like, or like what a corporate person looks like how those structures and what kind of movement is acceptable for certain people. Like, is like, can we go into the board meeting and be like, yeah, let's just feel into our bodies a little bit. Let's get down, or let's move our hips and spines. Like for most white men, that is not okay. Movement like this, even for my mom, I showed her this video of this woman doing this continuum movement. And my mom was like, "Ooh, what is that? Why would I want to move like that?" I'm like, because that is alive. That is life energy moving through your body. There's all this capacity and hydration. And it's like, it is life. It's like, so actually, once she'd seen it, then it was less threatening. But if things are new to us, it's very threatening. So that's the thing about what I'm saying. When we start to experience different possibilities of movement in our body, it can be like, oh, this is unfamiliar territory, and I'm not certain how I am with this. Or if we see other people moving in ways that aren't the way we move, it can be very threatening. Like even just thinking about like twerking, like, oh my God, people are sticking their butt out and they're shaking it. If you go to Jamaica and you go to like a dance hall event, they're going to be doing a lot more than just shaking their butts. And it's accepted within the culture. It doesn't mean what we see it meaning, right? When it was like a halftime show, and it was J-Lo, and she did some pole dancing stuff. And I think Shakira did stuff, and people were really threatened by, oh, it's all sexualized. I'm like, well, is it sexual movement, or are you sexualizing it? How do you take in the movement, right? Who's making the movement sexual? So we have these different cultural ideas of what movement is and what is acceptable movement for different types of bodies, which is also, and I'm just going to broaden this, I'm going to bring it into this idea. What do we expect from our teachers? How should they like present themselves? How should they move? How should they be human within their lives? Because I think a lot of times there's this like perfectionism that we place on people. I remember having a yoga teacher, and one time he's like, "You want to go out and have a beer?" And I was like, "Oh, you drink beer? You're a human? What?" Like, so we have these desires for our teachers to be like these pedestal perfect creatures, and we're not. Nobody is. Everyone's gonna mess things up. I don't know why I'm going off on this tangent today. I'm going off on it because a lot of things that I see happening in the world of embodiment, there's all this question of like, how do we name it? What is it? Who owns it? So how do we grow and shrink with that? How do we get bigger in our bodies with that? How do we get smaller? And is getting smaller sometimes helpful? Is getting bigger sometimes helpful? Is getting bigger threatening? Is getting smaller threatening? What happens when somebody else gets smaller? What happens when you see a person shrinking? What happens when you see a person growing? Yeah, so just to bring that stuff in, or what about this, like really moving into somebody's space, or moving into somebody's space, right? I'm offering, or I could be pushing you away, or I could be saying no. Like there's all of this meaning, and the meaning might just be what it is to me, not what it is to somebody else. Somebody else, like that might be like, oh, we're going to play patty cake. It's a game. Or, oh, it's no, it's, and so much of how we read things into what other people are doing is because of our own experiences of that stuff and what it means. Anything to say about that? I'm sure there's a lot to say about it. It's so cultural too.
I only had the memory of the last time that when we do this movement in Laban, that is for me, it's not nice. So
the crossing,
the little space I get here, it's like uncomfortable, and the widening is for me at this moment feels better. But I'm also maybe afraid of taking all this space, and for me that's also because I'm always a bit like this, or I've been, and I start opening more, but still it's not very familiar. I come in like, hello, here I am. So, but it feels feels great if I do it in a safe space. Then
yeah, it's an interesting thing. With you know, it is specific to the circumstances, right? How we show up, and how, you know, I'm actually much more of a talker when I'm teaching. If I went to a party, I probably wouldn't talk very much. Like, I might with one or two people, but I'm usually not like pontificating when I'm in a group of people. Like, I'm kind of like, eh. Yeah.
What a great word, pontificating. And thanks so much for wearing that shirt. I was watching a Queen's tribute, and he and Annie Lennox was singing, and oh my gosh, Annie Lennox walking on broken glass, like, my goodness. So I want to say thank you so much for also bringing that. I mean, coming from what I've just gone through this week, it seems like I can definitely take my experiences from my repertoire and apply it to my perspective. But at the same time, I'm always trying to invite other people's perspective, because this world is big enough for me and you. Like, so I really liked how you kind of, you know, use that, I guess, used movements. And even though you're talking about dancing, and in particular pole dancing, it kind of still resonated with what I was going through.
Yeah, actually, so that's going to take us into the next thing that I want to do. And that is just to walk. If we were taking any kind of modern dance class, well, not any kind of modern dance class, like any kind of sort of improvisational class, we would probably start with walking around the room. And if I was working with you guys in an actual room, like we were in the same place, I would have us do this. So what I want you to do is first, just feel your feet on the floor as you walk. So as you're walking, as you're moving, feel the skin of your feet. Maybe it's touching your sock, maybe it's in a shoe. If you can take off shoes and have like either bare feet or socks, do that. But really tune into the sole of your foot, connecting to the ground. And then connecting into how does your weight move into that? And feeling into sort of, yeah, down into the earth, feeling the grounded quality of your feet connecting. And then also try taking it in different directions. So you're not always walking forward. You can cross over, you can move backwards, giving yourself a chance. And this would be that kind of more transverse movement where you can wind around and let it become less walky and maybe more following. Like, I'm just following curves. And I'm also kind of letting my weight take me one place and then another. Another way to make this, to take us off center, is to let yourself sort of fall. And you want to like let yourself go until you actually have to fall. So I can fake it and move, or I can really go until I have to move my legs. Actually, I've done this with kids a lot, and this is a super fun way to get people out of their thinking mind and into just like letting yourself, if you don't have space to fall around, maybe you can just watch us falling around or watch me. Yeah. So that's just finding what's it like to be centered and then off center. And allow your body to come into it so that their arms and legs, almost like a tumbleweed being thrown around. And then start to let that come to a close and start to take in the room. Now, if we were in a room with other people, we could like just take in each other. We could imagine, oh, there's Peen, there's Quentin, there's Abby. Like, we could just have a moment of just eye contact. And if we were a group of people who'd never met in person before, then walking around and just first being in our bodies, feeling what it's like to feel our own bodies, feeling our bodies in a few different ways, and then connecting to the idea of seeing other people. I don't think I'd have people falling around if they didn't know each other before, but just to show how this might be if we were actually together in a space. And then I might have us connect with a certain body part. So you can imagine that there are people around you. And instead of like shaking hands or hugging, try connecting like just a gentle touch with some body part. Like, you could touch them with your hand, you could touch them with your elbow, touch them with your butt, touch them with your chest. Maybe that's then too sexualized. Touch them with your knee. Yeah, but finding ways of just a slight tap. Imagine you have people around you. Tap into a person and then shift, tap into a person. So we start to feel being people together, but without having a story, just letting us be bodies moving in a room. It's so funny, imagining what this would be like if we were all in a room together. And then coming in, and let's take one more layer of this, and we're going to imagine that we are in the space that we're in for the first time ever. So you're going to look around your space as if you've never seen anything in your space before, as if this is the very first time. You're in your space. You don't have to worry about the other people for right now. You've just come into this space. Look around, see what's in the space. And as you're looking around, notice what your body's doing. Are you finding different ways to check things out? Imagine that you're having an Easter egg hunt or something like that, and you're trying to find the Easter egg. Where might it be? Looking around, seeing in different places. Not just coming in like a person with your regular levels, but checking down low, checking up high. So we've done this all visually. Now start to feel the space. Touch things in the space. Give yourself a little, and maybe you touch them with your hands, or maybe you touch it with some other body part. Ooh, I've got lilacs, I can smell them. Letting yourself be in the space, feeling the way things feel in the space. So we're adding the touch sense. And now let's come back to that idea in the beginning of lightness, things that are light, they float, light, free, and easy, and then things that are strong and more muscly. Just playing with the idea of connecting to things with a sense of strength, and maybe connecting, maybe to the air, maybe to something around you with a sense of lightness. Very gentle touch or a very strong push. Touching like you're touching a baby's cheek, or touching like you're pushing a door, a really heavy door, or moving a piano across the floor. So playing with these ideas of how you're connecting. Connect to something, connect to another thing, connect to an imaginary thing, changing the way that you connect. Yeah, and then coming back in. So basically we're just playing right now with a bunch of possible ways of being in our bodies and in our space, with the imaginary people around us. And all of this really is to build capacity for thinking and for awareness. Like, how am I in my body now? What did I notice? So that we're not objectifying our bodies. We're not looking at it like a thing that's separate, but it's this participatory event that's happening. So it's a process. It's not something separate from us. It is us. It's completely in harmonious relationship with whatever's going on in our mind at all times. Like, this is all one thing. It's not separate. All right. So having come to that, where are we? What are we noticing?
Well, I was touching my plants, and like I found a dead bird, like a praying bird, and I took some feathers from it, and I was feeling them, and I was just like more the nature of things I was touching or likely to touch.
And what did it bring up for you when you touched those things? What did you notice? Like, how did it feel?
Those were the soft things for me. And before that, I had the thought of, there's so many choices we have. I was so grateful for the choices to have. And I had to think of, yesterday I was in the woods and it was storming, and I was underneath trees and I saw them moving. It was like a heart, like the heart going and all moving together. Was like, well, I think because you were telling about we are not separate, Yeah, so yeah, that was what was coming in.
Nice. Thank you. I mean, and that's it. Like, we can learn Laban and know all the theory and all the stuff, but like, really, it's like, what is it like to participate with life, right? To participate with how we are, how we're feeling. And then the Laban stuff is just to give you more access to possibilities, more choices. You said it, no more choice. How about you, Abby?
I was touching things, and most of my things were furniture, but I also noticed what Pien was saying, how I'm touching it, but it's also touching me, kind of like what you had mentioned before, like you're breathing into this, but it's breathing into you. And I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. And then I was like, I want to eat something. I want to have my organs touch stuff too.
Yeah, food and nourishment, right? Like, and like taking care of meeting our own needs. Like, I teach a class in the morning. It's an exercise class, a movement class. And one of my students she's an art therapist, and she does music therapy and she does some movement therapy, but she's like trained, and she's had an operation recently. And so she had some time off, and she's doing all of her work online. She's working with kids. And she's like, oh my God, I've just come back to work, and it's so overwhelming. I'm on Zoom, like, all day long, a work day. And I have 15 minutes in between things to do something else. And I'm exhausted. And I'm like, this is the world that we've created, right? We create this world where people are operating with so much lack of capacity. And then we've made it more intense. So it's like, when we come back to the sense, like, oh, the human organism, like, what does it really need? Do I need some water? Do I need to go outside and sit in the sun? It's a very anarchistic idea to think that, oh, what if I just didn't do all those things I'm supposed to do at my job? But I'm just aware of how much our jobs are often incredibly dysfunctional. Like, this is not made for human bodies to thrive. And the people that are supporting other people to thrive, like, I'm a therapist, I'm supposed to be helping somebody, and yet I'm super under-resourced. How does that work? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the operating model. I feel like that's a lot of the reason of so many systems within this world, with the way that we look at things. So I don't know. That's like eating. Eat. If you're hungry, eat some food. Sometimes we don't have the option. Sometimes we really have to stick in there. I'm not like a total hedonist, just do what you want every second. But often our bodies have things to say, and sometimes we need to listen. Quentin, anything?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh. I actually was choking on something, but I'm still alive. When I was moving, and you said something about, I forgot what you said. Sometimes you say these really subtle things like, oh shit. And it opens up such a big playground just from like two words that I sort of get lost in it sometimes. But you said something about the feet, and I don't remember what it was. It was the back of the foot or something, but it was like it changed the way I walked because I really stepped. Oh yeah, you said let your weight feel the weight of it or something in each step. And I before each step, I settled my mind into the foot, to the heel. And it just like another kind of meditation. Like, I just focused my eyes on everything with each step. Like the focus on the weight, then looking. And I noticed all these different angles. Just like math. Everything looked like math to me. Parallel lines, triangles, shapes, curves, like everything just started to look not so much like the object, but just like smooth and sharp angles. And they were like everywhere, like a jungle full of angles. And I didn't pay attention to the color. I didn't pay attention to what the object was called, but I just kept feeling like something in my body and mind was changing moment to moment. And then I had this sense of weightedness. And I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the feeling weighted into the ground as I opened up my mind to being in a new room. And the other thing I did is I opened and cut off the light on and off. So when I cut the light on, it was light. Cut it off, it's heavy and dark. Up, on and off, on and off. And I thought that was fun. That was interesting. That's all I really remember at the moment. But I did feel like I got a whole new experience just from shifting my attention and letting my weight go into my foot as I opened my mind and walked around in the space. I really like that.
I think that you really named it with that. It's really about opening your mind, opening your body. And I feel like those two things, when you have more freedom in your body, your mind has more freedom. When we can open these things up, there's much more capacity, much more ease, much more choice. And I think that so if I was just teaching straightforward Laban, and I have to say that this was true of my training, which was in the 90s, there was lacking the meditative aspect of it. Like there was move and feel into your body and all this kind of stuff, but the sort of concept of layering, that each moment is a new moment, I don't think I really understood that so much until I started. I'm muting you again just because you're feeding back. Just because until I started doing continuum. And the idea is always look for the new thing. So instead of repeating a pattern over and over and over and over with continuum, it's always what if you just let go of that pattern and search for something different, so that it's always searching towards novelty. And if you feel like you get stuck in doing the same thing, let go of that pattern. So the idea of a lot of exercise is repetition, do the same thing over and over again. And then you're just oh, I know this thing, I've already done it. But if you do it with mindfulness and awareness, it's whoa, it's totally different every single time. So there's that idea of coming into the moment, oh my God, if I went into a class and I'm oh God, we have to walk around the room again. Why do I have to walk around the room again? I don't want to do that. I've done it a million times. But if I can be in it with curiosity and an open mind, what's it like to walk around the room today? What do my feet feel like? How's my body feel? How am I landing in the awareness of this moment? Then it becomes interesting, right? Every possibility is super interesting. So I feel the combination, the work of Laban is really a tool for me to be more involved in movement and in the world. All the space stuff. Well, when I know that I have these places I could go, right, then I have access to different things. So let's just do a space. I'm going to do it on my butt. A space sort of improvisation where we can go anywhere in space. You're ready for improv. Yeah, a space improv where you can reach into places, and maybe you're making up your own places, but try to be as diverse in your improvisation as you can. Try to find all the space around you. How can you get there? Are there different ways? Are there different ways for your body to go to something, to come back from something? So in a way, what we're doing, or what I'm doing, it might be different for you, is a lot of central to peripheral. I'm going from the center to the edge, but I'm not really just moving around the periphery. So start to add some peripheral stuff where you're finding the edges of the possibilities and moving from one edge to another edge, maybe coming back into center and then shooting it out, finding another edge. Letting yourself explore your kinesphere and feel if there's places that you want to go and stay, and there's places that you're not really going very much. Are you not getting a lot of crossing? We're aimed forward as humans, right? We're aimed there. So it's easier to do that than it is to do that in the backspace. But let yourself explore. And then let's switch it so that now here we are in the center, there's the periphery. Try to make your pathways sort of wind and wend. So you're rotating and spiraling to get from one place to another in this, what we call transverse movement, neither in the center nor along the edge, kind of spirally, elbows, shoulders, knees getting into the game. Neither being in the center nor on the periphery. And feel what it does to your breath. So we're not really in that growing and shrinking so much now. We're in this very different pattern of being and moving. Letting things travel through the space with these circling, spiraling, meandering pathways. And then let's bring it back in. That was a lot of arm action. And I actually have to end this class a little bit early because I've got to go to another Zoom room today. So what did you notice with that? We kind of did some central stuff. We did some peripheral stuff. We did some transverse stuff.
The second that we, the second part when we were staying much more from the center, and then it was like I had a judgment about it that I could move less, but then I was like, well, no, there's lots of movement also possible in this kind of moving. So I was like, why the judgments? So yeah.
That's so great though, just to notice, right? And also then to notice, like, when you feel the judgment, where is the judgment, like in your body? How does that land? Like, is there a contraction? Is there a pull away? Is there, like, when you're in that place? Oh, for me, immediately I pull back, right? And actually I don't pull straight back. I pull back at an angle right now. Could be different tomorrow, could be something else. But what do I notice in myself when I'm going, discernment? Like, I don't do discernment like this. I do it like this, right? So it's funny how, like, we have these patterns, but you know what? Sometimes it's like my body just doesn't want to do something. There's always that. Oh.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello. For some particular reason, this class does feel a little bit more today like improv than for the other classes. I don't know. And also, I also feel a little bit more judgment. For me, it has to do with there's so few of us. When there's so many other people doing goofy stuff or, trying to do their best thing, whether it's Friday or Thursday, I like, they look a mess. So I can look a mess, and it's like, whatever. Some of them look more like they're dancing, and some look they're just moving. So that's different. And I didn't realize it as much until she said something. But my mind feels so creative right now and feels like I'm ready to jump into an improv comedy class. I just feel so ready and not as inhibited. And the feet thing really makes me feel grounded, but grounded in movement. Like movement and being grounded at the same time. I know as a dancer that's old for you, but for me, oh man, because sometimes when I do front snap kicks and doing my taekwondo when I was more active, I always worried about someone kicking my leg out from underneath me because I wasn't really grounded. I feel much more grounded, and also groundedness has this heavy quality, and it makes me feel like I'm too judgmental or I'm too not open. The way we applied it, the groundness was helping you open up. It was helping my mind open to possibilities, as opposed to I've got to be now. You got to make a decision. You got to be right. It was different, less aggressive.
Yeah, that's a great reflection and noticing. And all of these things are just different ways of landing and being. And it could be good, it could be bad. It could be good, it could be bad. Like, that's a judgment also, right? Which sometimes maybe being aggressive is going to be effective. You need that. Sometimes you need something different. But we did do much more improvisation today. Normally it's more form-based in this class. And I was like, you know what? Well, I just don't feel like it. You've all done it. We've all done that. Like, now let's move. Because I think that, in this world in general, there's a lot of form, and there's a lot of emphasis on form, and there's much less, well, what happens if we shift it? What happens if we change it? What happens if we, and now we're in a place where we need to shift, change, and adjust, I think, like as a whole society. So the people who can not always be like, I don't think that everybody who's the shapeshifter should always be accommodating everybody else. But I do feel like maybe just starting to learn, oh, there's a different way of being grounded. There's a different way of being fiery. There's a different way of being fluid. That's super valuable. And also that we honor our own intelligence, right? Your body has a lot of intelligence, but you haven't necessarily learned how to question and to experiment within the system of being in your body that much, because it's just not taught unless you've been in these embodied practices. There's or, you know, some experimental thing somewhere, but generally it's not the form. Like people are, do it right, do it like this, it should be like that. There's a lot of judgment, a lot of right and wrong. But in this, it's really like, it's just exploration and play. There's not a right and wrong. Yeah. So anyway, I am going to close it out so I can go to my next thing, but it's super awesome to see you all. And yeah, I do recommend, if you have a chance, to go back to the Luna breath with the big breathing again, just so when you're by yourself, to see if you can find that growing and then centering, growing. So it's like expansive and diffuse, and then sort of centering back in. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you very much, Quentin. Thank you, Abby.
Yeah, nice to be here with you guys.
Thank you all.
Oh, and Abby, just WhatsApp me to ask questions. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye.
See you later.